So like we're not putting this out there without like we're trying it too.
Mm-hmm.
We're all just trying together.
Yeah, we're kind of talking to ourselves.
Yeah. Yes, we are. We really are.
Well, we literally are. We're sitting in a room talking to ourselves, hoping somebody listens. Hey everybody, welcome to the 10th episode of No Small Thing. I'm Scott.
Double digits, and I'm Macie.
Double digits.
Double digits. We're here.
We're going to be talking about the Enneagram tonight. And
it is our second Enneagram installment.
we have an announcement to make.
What's our announcement? Oh, that we're going to write a book?
Oh, no. No. We should have built up to that.
Oh.
We want to write a book.
We really want to write a book about the Enneagram. I mean, that's
Send us encouraging vibes.
Yeah, because, I mean, that would...
Pray for us.
It'll take a long time and a lot of preparation. We're in the beginning stages of that, I would say, but
in the beginning stages, meaning we've talked about it?
Yeah. It's a goal of ours, though. I don't know our timeline with it.
Put the goal out into the universe. You just did it.
Yeah, well, also, okay, can I just go on?
I wasn't even thinking we're going to talk about the book.
Okay, well, so there's this liturgist episode where Science Mike talks about, like...
The liturgist is a podcast that we recommend.
I highly recommend. And he talks about how for a year, every day in meditation, he would think about the, like, book, like, party when his book was first, like, published.
The Science Mike?
Yeah, and that is, like, what gave him the, like, helpful tool to, like, push him towards actually writing and doing that book.
Okay.
And he has a book that's written now. So
and he's going all over talking about it.
Yeah, and it's I have the book and I've only read part of it, but I've listened to the podcast episode about that book and the story of that book. Like, side
note, I've heard it said. I never want to like quote somebody that doesn't want to be quoted. It's so strange. Well, this is an interesting exercise. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Picture what you'd want people saying about you in a coffee shop if they were talking about you and you got to overhear them. And I would like people to say I have a podcast. And I would like people to say I've written a book. And be like, oh, yeah, Scott Gronholtz. Oh, yeah, he hosts No Small Thing with Macie. Like, he has a podcast.
And he's written a book.
Yeah, and he writes books and all sorts of
other
things.
Retreats.
Makes beats.
Makes beats, yes. But Macie, oh, yeah, she does ASMR.
Yeah, you'd want people saying that.
Yeah, I would.
Would you? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I do. Oh my gosh, wait.
We're jumping the gun on so many things right now.
Okay, wait.
You're just dropping ASMR. You're talking about books. I'm saying something else. No, don't do it. Oh my gosh. I wanted to say we have a goal/plan of doing an Enneagram episode every 5 episodes. So
yes.
We did an Enneagram episode on the 5th episode. We're doing an Enneagram episode on the 10th episode. And then we'll do an Enneagram episode on the 15th episode.
I love that it's in such nice numbers.
Yeah, and we're gonna spend time talking about each number. So the last time we did 5, and this time we're gonna do 4, which is you. So get excited and get emotional. And then I imagine after we get you and me out of the way, we'll start with 1. We'll talk about the 1, and we'll have a 1 on our show.
Probably Maddie.
Maybe Maddie. That makes the most sense.
It makes the most sense. The producer.
He's going to have to do a bit more research on 1s.
I think
call
he's
out,
done a lot.
Has he?
I mean, he's
okay. I revoke my call out, Maddie.
He's read quite a bit. He loves Richard Rohr. That's like I would say like one of his biggest like Enneagram.
I'm going to say this and maybe I can take
teachers.
it out if it's too offensive, but Matthew.
He doesn't like Matt.
Yeah, right when I said it, I didn't like how it sounded for him. He still strikes me as fairly defensive about his number. You know, like he's still like goaltending his.
I don't understand what that means.
Like he's not light about kind of like roasting 1s. Like you're like, oh, 1s do this, and he's like,
classic,
no. Because...
I think that makes sense for being a 1.
Wow, you could be right. This is the dilemma to anybody listening. We have not chosen a specific topic for this show. That's the whole point is that there's no specific topic. This isn't an Enneagram podcast.
No.
And it's not Steven Universe podcast. And it's not 21 Pilots podcast. But we're very aware as we've done these things that we would enjoy having an exclusively Enneagram-oriented podcast.
Yes.
Themed, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess the workaround for us is that we'll cover Enneagram every 5 episodes.
Yeah, and I think it'll be really fun to see the integration in terms of like, we did the Enneagram episode 5 weeks ago and we interviewed you as a 5, but we also just talked about the Enneagram. And we have since had a lot of experiences that have reshaped my understanding of the Enneagram. I would say just like broadened my understanding of the Enneagram.
You've gotten some books.
Oh, yeah. I've gotten a lot of books, and I think so have you.
Yeah.
So
not as much as you. I mean, I have like the Enneagram Bible, which is the wisdom of the Enneagram.
Yeah.
And then I have a bunch of downloaded books. But you bought, I think, 3 books. You bought the...
Yeah, I have the Sacred
Helen Palmer.
Enneagram, the Helen Palmer book, and the Intelligent Enneagram.
Well,
And,
what's the Chris
and the
Hewitt's?
Simple. That's the Sacred Enneagram.
Oh, and what's the
And
Helen
then
Palmer?
Just, I think, the Enneagram.
Oh,
It's
the
yellow.
Enneagram. And then you also have this new one for Simple Enneagram.
It's, yeah, like what Enneagram Made Easy, or Enneagram Simple. Not easy. It's like more just like simple and has really cool drawings and comics. And I actually think it's a good perspective of
Oh,
Enneagram.
I got one, and this is the problem. My
What?
son Jack, he doesn't even want to be mentioned in this podcast. He
So
could
don't
care
say
less. He loves the Enneagram, and he's in Europe. My family's in Europe right now. That's something we got to talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But he took all of my Enneagram books, and they're mine. He took them, and the wisdom of the Enneagram has so much information. So I
Yeah,
haven't
I
felt
wish
the
we
need
had
for more
it.
books. But then I got one. Just here's some
Wait.
information or a story. Macie and I, with some other team members at our church, were in a meeting, and we heard that there was a bookstore next to where we were meeting that had
yeah.
Enneagram books. So we went
Yeah.
next door and bought more Enneagram books. And the one I bought, I forget the name, but it's in Europe right now with my
mad.
son, was the most sort of intellectual.
Yeah,
Like, it
the
was
one I got was
hyper
crazy intellectual.
Yeah. And so like there's this wide spectrum. I think wisdom of the Enneagram, sacred Enneagram, these are all sort of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one I had was just like no pulling no punches, not trying to be extra readable. It was just hyper. And then you have this other one, simply Enneagram or whatever, that's like almost borderline for kids.
No.
No,
You're right.
it's not for kids, but it's like it
It's-
looks like it's for kids. Like there's little sweet pictures. It's very
That's
simple
true.
to
You're
understand.
right, you're right,
So
you're right.
I would say if
But that's okay. Can
What's
I just
the name?
Can I'm finding it right
Okay.
now, but pointing out it's borderline for kids. That makes me think of the Steven Universe thing, where it's like,
oh gosh,
you know what I
right
mean?
back to that.
You know what I mean, though.
Well, that now we're reversing roles because I was the one that told you not to say it's a kid's show.
I know, but I was.
I'm
open
not
to
saying it
learning.
is for kids. I'm trying to say
Oh,
what's it called?
the Enneagram Made Easy.
The Enneagram Made Easy. If you're a person that is a little nervous about diving into the Enneagram, Macie's showing me a picture of her with some high school student converts to the Enneagram, holding up this book. The Enneagram Made Easy. If you're a person that wants a nice soft start to the Enneagram, why don't you just download the Enneagram Made Easy?
By Renee Barron and Elizabeth YL.
Do it. It is fun. It's easy to understand. And then if you like it, go get a medium book like
I
the
think the
Helen
Sacred
Palmer.
Enneagram is. I think
Is
it's
that
a
a medium?
really good
Okay.
first one too.
Well, I guess we're going to do a little bit of a check-in, and
This is a long intro.
so, I wanted people to know we were talking about the Enneagram, but we did too long of an opener about the Enneagram. Now we want to do a check-in,
Here we are, everybody.
and we wanted to spend another little bit of time talking about please rate and review us on iTunes.
Oh, yeah, like cleaning house things.
Cleaning house, whatever that means.
We just, first of all, thank you. We want to say like a moment of thank you to people who have been rating and reviewing. So we're going to share a few reviews that
Or just listening.
Or yeah, people have just been listening, or like people have sent sweet texts. I think the last episode we put out was, I don't know, it was pretty special. I
We
enjoyed.
thought it was very special.
I think we thought it was special, and it was fun to share with different random people and hear our friends who were like, I took some white space. Like that was sweet to see. So just thank you for engaging with it and like engaging with us in like writing reviews and sharing with a friend. So are we gonna read reviews?
Yeah, should we like pass the computer back and forth?
Sure.
Okay.
Wait, Can I read the one from Justin?
Sure, here it comes.
So we got a review from
Macie's turning around the computer.
Justin, who on here, I think it says JMBD24. Justin works at the church that Scott and I work at, and
he's a very respectable human.
He is such a respectable human. I get to see Justin whenever I walk in and out of the church.
And they talk about WWE, which we'll probably talk about someday here.
Yeah, he's a sweet dude and a sweet, stable presence. I love Justin. And so he's been listening to our podcast, which is fun. And he said, it's great to hear Scott and Macie talk about things they're curious about, and that curiosity is contagious. The rapport is great, and their deep knowledge and passage of some of these topics shines through. A great podcast.
Yay,
so
Justin.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you. Oh, I want to say something else about my son. Yeah. Public call-outs. We have a lot of reviews and ratings. We have 44 ratings. We have 43 5 stars and 1 4-star. And my son is the one that gave us the 1 4-star that we have. Thank you, Jack.
I love Jack.
Yeah.
That is so funny.
So, what an amazing person. Okay, so this next one is from my friend Jamie, who lives in Texas. Jamie Weber 34. So nice. She says, loving the podcast so far. So this must have been in response to the last episode. She says, lots of love from Roanoke, Texas. I hope I said that right. Roanoke. I'm investing in some radical downtime right now after I write this review.
Wow.
Radical downtime.
Radical downtime. We are here for it.
Yeah, and I said in that episode that we're not giving a book report on our content from our trip. We really are hopefully genuinely trying to say something that's helpful to people.
Oh, no.
So if it's helpful, that's good. I mean, obviously if it's not, that's fine, but we're trying to help.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying to help.
We're trying to help. Okay, so those are some of our reviews, but we'd encourage you, like I said, we are on Stitcher, and we're on the Google Podcast app, and we're on SoundCloud. We are not on Spotify. That's the number one thing people keep asking me, and it's complicated. I'll just say it's complicated.
That's another thing we should say is that come September. So I don't know what day of the week it is, but Scott's leaving tomorrow. What
day is it? It's Saturday.
Yeah.
What day is it?
July 28th.
Macie and I just got back from another big trip.
Another big trip.
We were on a mission trip, and so we did Lake Shasta, which we talked about last week, and now yesterday at 6 p.m. our mission trip ended. So we both got 10 hours of sleep last night, but we're still recovering. Yeah. So that's why Macie doesn't know what day of the week it is. I'm going to Italy for 3 weeks. So I'll be gone, and Macie's going to be holding down the fort.
This is true.
And I think you have some plans.
Oh, yeah. So
what are your plans?
So we're going to be I hope to, while Scott's gone, to still give content that comes out every Monday, because I think consistency is something podcasts are supposed to really have. And I like the idea of starting the week out and having it out there.
If there are people that are enjoying our podcast, we want to honor you by being consistent.
Yes, it's so true.
We did take 1 week off, and there may be times where we take weeks off. But
what week did we take off?
We released the Macie rants while we're in Shasta.
But that's what I'm saying. So we
still
at least had
something.
content. And so that's kind of what these are going to be. So if you were to look at our thing, you'll see there's different numbers next to the way our titles look, which is very important to Scott.
It's important to me for some reason.
The way that it looks. And so these episodes that are coming to you, they're not going to be no small thing, trademarked, one of those 00 number.
Great way of saying it, trademarked.
Episodes. But they will, hopefully there will be content still every Monday. So it may be top rants. It may be some ASMR. Who knows? If you don't know what ASMR is, I'll probably explain it a tiny bit, but then mostly just give you guys some ASMR I've been doing. And then hopefully the last one will be some kind of listening experience.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
I don't know what it's going to be. But
I think the numbers thing, I feel like for potential listeners or people that are engaging with the podcast, I want them to know when they see an episode, in quotes, that it's you and me talking. If they're looking for that.
Right.
That they know that they're going to get a classic episode. But now that we've introduced the concept of rants, is you're scrolling through and that's what you're looking for.
We love rants.
Maybe that's what they want. They want to go straight to the rant. And it's not hidden. It's not episode 909, 21 Pilots, Macie. Is this one of the rants? It's like, no, it's bold. It's like Macie TOP rant, number 5, 10, 20, 20 TOP rants.
Oh, I could go on for hours. We're not talking about 21 Pilots on this episode.
Right. Okay, so that was our opener. Please, again, we're not fishing for compliments. If this podcast is to...
People know that by now.
I don't know. I'm insecure. I don't want people to think I'm fishing. I guess what I'm saying is we actually do believe in this podcast and we want it to succeed.
We really believe in this thing.
And it helps to get ratings and reviews on iTunes. I don't quite know what to do on Stitcher and Google Podcast app yet. But if you rate us and review us on iTunes, that's helpful.
Yeah, it's more complicated than I thought, but that's kind of fun too.
Mm-hmm. It has the added bonus of making us feel good.
What?
The ratings and reviews.
Oh, yeah. It gives us a smile. We're like, look at this. This is so sweet. But it's also just because it's like we actually, like, we hope you are engaging and you're not just listening. Like, we talk about radical downtime. Like, that's more, like, it's so special that people, like, because I've been taking that seriously. I've been trying to. Okay, so should we talk about the Enneagram now?
Okay, so here's what happens.
Catch you guys later?
Catch you guys later. We're going to get Slurpees. Okay, no, but we can make it less awkward. We're going to say, listen, you're about to get a musical interlude,
I wish
folks.
that we could go get Red Bulls right now.
You're about to get a musical interlude. And it's going to be a nice mental break.
Yep.
Maybe even consider it some white space for our podcast. And when we come back, there it is. We're going to talk about what we've learned about the Enneagram since our last episode and where we are. Fresh, hot off the press thoughts about the Enneagram.
Yep. And how it boxes us all in.
Catch you later. So since our last Enneagram episode,
that feels forever.
Many things have happened. We've first of all read more books, had more conversations, done more soul searching and self discovery through the Enneagram.
Yes,
and also this kind of interesting thing of we have really put out into the universe that we care about the Enneagram.
Yeah,
and we view ourselves as sort of very. Well, I don't know. Rookie experts.
That's a interesting, but I think proper way to describe it. Like, we're trying to understand it.
We're
teaching people.
We're teaching people,
which is an interesting thing. We like put it out in this podcast that we understand the Enneagram kind of, and we're teaching people, and we've been teaching people, which of course naturally means we understand it in a way different way now.
It's funny because there was this phrase that my grandpa and others used to say to me as like I was potentially training to be a pastor, and it's like studying the Bible and stuff. And there was this phrase that people would say of, you can only take somebody as far as you've gone yourself. And I remember at the time it was said with this sort of almost burden, like you better be growing and you better be studying the Bible and stuff. But if you apply that to what we've been doing with the Enneagram, our engagement with the Enneagram has been so fun. It's not like, shoot, well, I got to study the Enneagram so I can bring people to the point where I'm at. But that's all we're doing. We've read and studied the Enneagram, and all we're doing is inviting people to come up to where we are.
Yeah, true.
And go past us if they want. Go ahead.
Honestly. And like, hopefully just introducing people to it. And then like, I've been just sharing like the books I've been reading. So like, we've been on these 2 trips and I brought the book. So I've been reading them, but then like, I'm not the type, like anyone could borrow my book. So people have read through them, which is so fun because then I hear about like what it has meant for them to read and understand the Enneagram. So that's special.
We're going to talk about you in a second, but this isn't a 4 question. This is just you with the Enneagram as your rookie expert.
Yeah.
What have you learned that you think since our last episode? What have you learned about the Enneagram?
Well,
I know you've learned many, many things, but
yeah, I think the thing that we kind of want to talk about, or just is like I've been given the different perspective of what the Enneagram is in terms of it being like a tool that helps us to like find our inner self in this almost idea of like and I think we both want to talk about this, but like we're not our number. We are like actually like almost like the opposite of our number, or our number reveals like the false self we've put up. And then like we're searching, the Enneagram is our way to take off that mask and find our inner selves.
That's what people need to know. Yeah. And that's what we need to know. I mean, we're still so new to this, but
yeah.
And I already knew that, but not in the way I think I know it now.
Well, yeah, because we have been so in the last episode about the Enneagram, Scott talked about the idea of a box, and we have encountered a shocking amount of people.
It's a meme now.
It is like, yeah, it is
it's a total meme.
The joke that it's like, okay, if I'm going to introduce the Enneagram, which it's, everybody comes up and asks us, what is the Enneagram?
Let's say this so people understand and know.
Yeah.
First of all, we went to Shasta, and it's like we're all in these houseboats. So we talked about wilderness and our content for the week last week, but we didn't really talk about how much we talked about the Enneagram. We're 5 houseboats linked up together for a week.
Yeah.
And we just wander from boat to boat in this sweaty mess and try to have conversations and then jump in the lake and eat sugar all day. But like people,
you just described it in the most like
it's a great trip, but it's also crazy. I don't know, like people got wind that Macie and I were talking about this thing called the Enneagram. So there was like these factions. There was like definitely a group of people that were annoyed and skeptical, and then a group of people that were really interested. And the group of people that were annoyed and skeptical would somehow be in the room when an interested person would say, Scott and Macie, tell us about the Enneagram, which also became its own meme.
Yeah, because it's like you start explaining, and so I'll like
a crowd would gather.
You start explaining, and then it would be like, I'm on number 6, explaining 6, and then like at this point, people have walked in. So by the time you finish 9, somebody else is waiting, saying, "Okay, I walked in at 6. Can you explain 1 through 5?"
Yeah.
So then I'm restarting, which is such a bummer.
And this happened all week.
Like, all week,
yeah.
all week. In like this most recent trip, I was not. We explained it a tiny bit. I did a little bit.
Oh, right. I think we did. We were a little spent.
Yeah, I think so
on
too.
Enneagram. But it's funny because here's what happened. Like, no, I don't imagine any of these kids had listened to our Enneagram episode.
No,
maybe
I think
one
maybe
or two.
1 or 2.
And it was just crazy because if you go back and listen to our last episode, I have a rant about boxes and how people talk about this box thing.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody, like the universe doubled down on this box thing. Like kids that didn't even know I said this just kept saying it. You know, we would present the idea of the Enneagram and then you could see it coming. You could see it in their face. I'm like, they're going to say it. They're going to say it. And they would say, yeah, but you can't box me in, or that sounds like you're trying to put me in a box. And it was just so hard to not just like laugh at them. And it feels like some sort of weird big, like, it feels it's not true, obviously, but it feels like the universe is pranking us.
With the box?
Yeah, like everybody got in a room together and say, hey, if Scott ever brings up the Enneagram, bring up the box thing. I'm like, I can't believe this is such a go-to phrase for people. Box.
It really makes sense on some level. To me,
it's only exclusively to these things, though. Like if somebody said, "Are you a youth pastor?" I don't say, "Don't box me." You know what I mean?
I know, but people don't understand it as language. So that's
youth
another
pastor.
thing.
I am a youth pastor.
So
literally. Sorry.
Do you have more to say about the box?
No.
Well, no, you can keep going off about the box.
I think we're gonna say very calmly and rationally in a second why it's not a box. It really, truly is not.
It really, truly
in
is
whatever
not. And that's why this
way
meme is so
using
funny. Is because it's like, that's the predictable response, and it's like, it takes some time to get that deeper understanding. So it's just like,
I've never naturally had that thought in my brain.
I naturally have had that thought
about box.
Really? I think that's a 5 brain thing, probably.
I've probably had
I have no idea.
I know I have the fear. This is a 5 thing for sure, of being misunderstood or somebody thinking they understand what I said when I didn't.
Yeah.
Say that.
Yeah.
Or labeling me as something if they say, "Oh, he's progressive," or he he's a Democrat. I'm like, I don't like that label, and I have some, some caveats to that label. But I've never been like, don't box me. I've never thought, don't box me or put me in a box. I've never thought of that before.
I don't know. I mean,
so
I think
weird.
I definitely have.
Well, I'm sure you do as a 4.
Yeah, so that just kept going up. And there was it was fun that's where we got the idea to write the book, because we were talking about the Enneagram with youth. Mm-hmm. And I think our book, we realized there are certain aspects to most of the literature that we were reading or coming from that are more for an older audience or for an audience of just like an adult self-discovery. Mm-hmm. So I think we're starting to see a gap in terms of like there not being something for families / like understanding yourself as you're coming into your like coming of age.
And yeah, exactly. And what we're going to say in just a second about these numbers is the misconception. The other go-to phrase that's right behind box is self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, yeah. People love to say that.
And that is a misunderstanding. And so, like, if people are going to say developmentally, it's not appropriate for a teenager to identify with a number.
Yeah, some people do.
I don't think that's... we'll get my son Jack started on that. I mean, he essentially says we're born with our number.
Yeah, some people think that we're just born right in
So it's I mean, I could see if handled improperly or handled, irresponsibly, it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
But if it's understood properly, it can be helpful. So for these reasons, do you want to talk a little bit about this? Or should I start?
What?
About how we're not our number.
Oh, yeah,
We aren't our number.
No,
we're not in a box.
You begin talking about that,
okay.
And then I have something to read.
So here's something that I understood, but I've come to understand much better, I guess maybe because I've needed to respond to the extreme pushback that I didn't anticipate, which is essentially our number describes who we are. And that gives us some grace to accept ourselves and understand ourselves. Mm-hmm. We are who we are, and that's in so many ways beautiful, and every number is beautiful in its own way. But our number is also sort of the defense mechanisms and coping mechanisms and masks that we have cultivated in our life in order to survive. And so the Enneagram actually, it's so ironic. The Enneagram is meant to break you out of your box. You're in a box. You're in a box based on your own habits and defenses that you've created your whole life. And the Enneagram is meant to help you identify that so you can get out of it.
Yeah.
And so all the language that the Enneagram uses is sort of integration is one of the big buzzwords, but maturity, growth, essence, like as you sort of move out of your number and deviate away from it and get out of your patterns and habits, you break out of your box. And that's what's really beautiful about it.
Yeah, I think the like imagery that I get in terms of it is it's like, well, first I just love the phrase "your path to peace." And
path to peace.
It just being like, it being your way out, and like I also like get this picture of like a river and like this yellow raft like guiding you up, and there's all these like different streams, and like but this like raft, like finding the Enneagram is like it's getting you across the river to finding yourself. It's like a tool to find yourself. It's a way to do that. But you have to do a lot of the work and a part of the journey, but it's like it's a guide almost.
Yeah, and so you can all sympathize with us, people that haven't listened to us talk about the Enneagram and they bring up the box. But if you've listened to this podcast now and you talk about a box, I'm going to be really angry.
Oh my God. I'm not going to be angry.
I'm so sick of the box
I'm not going to be
conversation.
angry. I'll still have the conversation.
Kidding. I'm totally kidding. But I think Macie and I both have a few things we want to read that address this.
I'm reading from The Sacred Enneagram, which Chris Hewart's wrote it. He is the one who's featured in all of the Sleeping at Last Enneagram podcasts, which if you haven't checked out and you're a number 1 through 5, you really should check out. But if you haven't checked out, honestly, you should just check them all out. He's taking his time doing these songs in episodes, but it's worth it. Anyway, so he interviews Chris Hewart's, and Chris Hewart's wrote The Sacred Enneagram, which I started teaching was using as like a resource with my small group, which was really fun. And we only talked about what the Enneagram was. We didn't even talk about typing, which was
small
super
group
fun.
of sophomore girls at the church.
Yeah.
Just making sure we know what you mean when you say small group.
Clarity.
Small group of karaoke friends on Friday nights.
Karaoke.
Who's your small group? What is that?
Oh, no. They're sweet teens. Okay, and so this is actually not even from Chris Hewerts. It's from his wife, Felina, and from her book, Pilgrimage of a Soul. But it's about this false self and our true self. So here it is. We are asleep to our unconscious motivations, and these motivations mask our true self. In essence, we are hiding, and the wound in our soul remains unhealed, infecting every aspect of our lives. We are so asleep to our reality that we don't know we are hiding behind the masks of our false self. In our slumber, we are unable to distinguish between what is true and what is false. These masks become so familiar to us, they become a part of our very identity. When I awakened to the presence of masks in my life, I knew not at first what was truly me and what was a false version of me, what was a mask and what was authentic, beautiful me. Only time would tell.
Ooh, that's huge.
I know. I think that one's so good.
I mean, we didn't write it, but like, I like to think this episode is worth it just for that one quote. You know? Gosh, we have so many masks and we're all sleeping. It's painful work. It's not comfortable.
Painful, I think, is the wrong word. I mean, I guess there's aspects of it that are painful. It's very intimate work.
It's intimate work.
Doing
That's
the
a good
work
way
of
of
the
saying it.
Enneagram.
It does seem like there's different types of personalities, and I don't even think this is an Enneagram thing, that are more afraid to do the self-reflection.
Introspection.
I like to think I'm not afraid. Maybe that's because I'm too in control. I mean, who knows if like somebody brought me to some actual painful realizations. I had that though. I've had that in life.
Yeah.
I just think as a 5, there's just so much curiosity. It's not that it's not like we have a monopoly on curiosity. Everybody's curious in their own way. I'm just saying like especially the 5
5s
wing 4.
remind us. I mean, the 5 aspects remind us to be curious.
Mm-hmm. And it says 5 wing 4 has a propensity to gravitate towards dark themes and the grotesque, it says. I sort of, in a different way than a 4, I think, a true 4, take some sort of weird, twisted pleasure in thinking about my dark sides.
Yeah.
Whatever
No,
that
I think a
means.
4, it's really self-inflicting. And like,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more emotionally painful than it is analytical and like brain exciting for a 5.
I think I want absolute truth. Like, if you were to sit here and say, Scott, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you the most like blunt, hard, critical things I think about you, there would be part of me that would be so intrigued by that.
Yeah, me too.
I wouldn't even be threatened. I'd be like, whoa, let's hear it. What is it? This is going to be interesting.
No part of you be threatened?
Very little.
Really?
Very, very little. I'm sure there's
a lot would be threatened, but I would for sure want it still, I think.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, wait, are we going to just go talk about the 4 now? Or are we still talking? You have something to read?
I'm going to read something, and then we'll talk about the 4, which is Macie. The 4.
The 4.
She's in the room.
Gosh.
This is something along the same lines.
The 4 box.
And this is from a book that's not about the Enneagram. It's called The Gift of Being Yourself. And I'm not even going to find the author. I don't have the physical book, so I'm looking at my ebook, and I don't want to go searching for the author. I'm not even going to look for it right now. I'll post it. It's a great book. It's a very great book.
Okay.
He's a pastor and therapist, and he talks. It's a whole book about trying to figure out who you are, and he utilizes the Enneagram throughout the book. And so this is a chapter about how to discover your false self. The gift of being yourself. The gift of being yourself. Are you going to find the author? And so this chapter is called Recognizing Your False Self.
David G. Benner.
David G. Benner. It's such a good book.
Yep.
Psychologists use this book. Therapists use this book. Psychoanalysts use this book. It's
I've never read this
not
book.
this book. The Enneagram. That's what I mean.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So
some do, some don't.
Yeah. So this is about recognizing your false self, and this is what I'm saying is this isn't necessarily about the Enneagram, but the Enneagram helps you do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it says, this is so good. I wish I could read this whole chapter, but I'll just read this little section. While other people's excessive attachments and personal falsity often seem glaringly apparent, it is never easy to know the lies of our own life. There are, however, some trustworthy clues if we dare to be honest enough to face them. One of these is defensiveness. Because of its fundamental unreality, the false self needs constant bolstering. Touchiness...
Oh, no, Dodger. What is it?
My dog just started barking, I think because he saw another dog walk by our house.
He's so
Didn't
protective.
like that.
He's a 6'5", everybody.
My dog is a 6'5".
Probably a counterphobic 6'5".
Yeah.
We love this baby.
Counterphobic.
Dodger. Self-preservation. Social. Oh, look at him. I love Dodger.
Wow.
I get to watch Dodger for the next 3 weeks, and I cannot wait.
Okay, so what this is another side note. People will say as you read the numbers of the Enneagram, the one that causes you to feel the most offensive may be your number.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So they say defensiveness is a telltale sign that you might be actually touching on a nerve of truth.
Yeah.
So because of its fundamental unreality, the false self needs constant bolstering. So your false self, which in some ways is your number. It's both and. Your true self is in your number and your false self. Touchiness dependably points us to false ways of being. And the more prickly a person you are, the more you are investing in the defense of a false self. Oh, boy. So prickly people out there, get serious. Some people bristle easily if they are not taken seriously, thus betraying a need for others to see the self-importance that is so obvious to them. Others take themselves too seriously, perhaps being unable to laugh at themselves. Both reactions suggest ego inflation.
Whoa, it's all about your ego.
Yeah.
It's all about your false ego, everybody.
Others have learned to mask these outward displays of defensiveness, but inner reactions of annoyance or irritation still point toward the presence of a false self. And we all have a false self. I have always disliked being called Dave. So this is the author now.
Okay.
Sometimes I correct people who do so. More often, I simply remind myself how trivial the matter is and attempt to ignore my irritation. The obvious question, though, is why am I making such a big deal out of one consonant at the end of a name? Why am I making such a big deal out of one consonant at the end of the name? The answer points back to the core of my false self. David, I confess, seems to fit better with the image of seriousness I want to project. Dave seems too common and ordinary, perhaps too familiar. In the puffed-up state of self-importance associated with my false self, I want to be unique and I want to be important. I don't want to be content with the ordinary. I do not want to be called Dave.
Wow.
That's how the false self works. Its touchiness is...
Is he a 4?
I don't know. That's how the false self works. Its touchiness is predictable. Pettiness is one of its most stable characteristics. The things that bother us most about others, our pet peeves, also point towards falsity in our own self. The speck that bothers me in the life of someone else is almost always the speck in my own eye.
What?
Yeesh.
What? Oh, wow. Okay, wait. I have
Macie
one
has
more
some
thing
quotes.
to say. No, this is just...
We're already at 45
There's
minutes.
all of these... No,
Isn't that
it's
crazy?
fine,
Yeah,
people.
it's fine.
Sorry. Joe Rogan goes for 3 hours,
yeah.
everybody. The contemporary Enneagram of personality illustrates the 9 ways we get lost, but also the 9 ways we come home to our true self.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. There it is. Again, another quote that's...
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
That's the whole podcast is worth it for that one.
Okay, wait, I have one more.
Please.
And then I'll be done. Okay. We live unawakened lives marked by self-perpetuating lies about who we think we are or how we wish to be seen. Tragically, we don't know who we are or what we look like, and often it takes an unlikely other to remind us what's true. You're beautiful.
Oh,
Thanks,
man.
Chris Hewarts.
Oh, it's so heavy.
He's so special.
It's so heavy. Yeah. Well, we that's I think a maturity sort of path of integration thing is that we all become a little less defensive.
Yeah. So, guys, I'm about to reveal myself on this episode as a 4, and 4s are wild.
Everybody's wild in their own way.
Yeah, but here we go.
Do 4s want to be the most wild?
Maybe, I don't know. But this is like a fours. This film recording this is
Film.
like I don't know how to say that. Is like both very good and I think like just so much for a 4.
Yes.
Being vulnerable and putting it out there is like
Complicated.
very complicated for a 4.
So when we come back from our musical interlude, we're gonna deep dive into 4s and Macie in particular. And this is an example. Like think of what we just heard. This is an example of not box. Like we're not saying 4s are like this, and here's Macie being a 4. It's saying here's Macie's unique version of being a 4, and here's also how she's attempting not to be a 4. You know what I mean? So there it is. When we come back. Okay, so now after our little preliminary opening comments that took almost 50 minutes, we're going to dive into the 4.
Here we are, everybody.
Yeah. That is one of the things of like if we had a podcast that was just dedicated to the Enneagram, it would be probably a little different. But so one of the ways I think we're going to try to go about this is that I'm going to read the description of the 4 from the Enneagram Institute. And so here's something, too. We've been giving resources. There's all these great books. The easiest resource is the Enneagram Institute on the internet.
Yeah.
It's credible. You can go on and read about all the types, and
they have like a test.
They have so many great resources.
Which,
they have a test.
Tests are complicated, but they are a way to understand it.
And one of my favorite features on the Enneagram Institute, beyond the descriptions of the numbers, is the compatibility with other types.
Yeah.
So you can read what a 4 is like in a relationship with a 2 or any of the numbers. And so that's really interesting. So I'm going to read about what a 4 is. I don't know if I'll read the whole thing. Maybe I'll just give the gist. But we could even pause midway through and see if you have any reactions. And kind of use it as a guide almost. But then we're going to try to let Macie speak. Try to let Macie speak. And then I have some questions, obviously. But I think Macie also has her own reflections on what it's like to be a 4. That will probably need much guiding. So type 4 overview. This is from the Enneagram Institute. www.enneagraminstitute.com. It's not hard to find, everybody. Everybody's always asking, where should I get started? Here it is. Enneagram Institute. It's not hard.
My answer is always Google it.
Google it, people. Honestly, that's the answer to everything. Okay, type 4. We have named this type the individualist. Now, Macie and I know this is also called the romantic, or what else is this called?
The tragic romantic.
The tragic romantic. The individualist.
Yeah.
Individualist seems to be the most go-to because 4s maintain their identity by seeing themselves as fundamentally different from other people. 4s feel that they are unlike other human beings, and consequently that no one can understand them or love them adequately. They often see themselves as uniquely talented, possessing special, one-of-a-kind gifts, but also as uniquely disadvantaged or flawed. More than any other type, 4s are acutely aware of and focused on their personal differences and deficiencies. There are probably 6 more paragraphs, but why don't we just stop there and get a response from Macie? How do you respond to that? What resonates with you?
I think almost every part of it does resonate on some level.
And as somebody that knows you, it fits.
Yeah. I think the thing that is what I have starting to understand and reading that I can hear this is 4's experience like contrast or like this. So like in that they're talking about, can I look at it?
Yeah.
They like have an eye for like great beauty in themselves. And then they also like, it's always the like flip side of that coin of like, they are like marked by like kind of like seeing deficiencies in themselves and thinking there's a part of them that's like actually not beautiful. And that's like they can like see beauty, but they can't see it in themselves. And that's like where it comes from. It's so dark, everybody.
Yeah. And it also seems that they are like protective. I mean, I guess we'll probably get personal tonight because this is personal. You seem to be very protective of your pain, that it's unique to you and hard to understand, in quotes. And it's risky if somebody actually does understand it or comprehends the pain.
Well, I think that's another like aspect of fourness is like fours like are constantly feeling misunderstood. Like there's just like,
and but that's the ambivalence about that is that they sort of want to be misunderstood.
There's a part of them that wants to be misunderstood, but then I think there actually is like, I think it's a fear ultimately that if they are understood completely, that like people won't like love them. It's so dark. But that's the childhood wound of the four when you really think about it.
What is it?
Like fear of abandonment. And like this like feeling that I should read about it. Should I just read that?
Sure, and that's another thing we should clarify as you're looking for your quote is we've learned this from Chris Hewerts and also who's the guy that does the Enneagram songs? Ryan is your childhood wound. And this is so great because it becomes a lot less threatening for all parties. Like it's not blaming your parents or you or anybody necessarily. Maybe there's some blame, but your childhood wound is your perceived or experienced wound, whether it's true or not. Like if we went back and watched the tape of what actually happened, it may or may not be true, but you experienced it that way. So like I experienced certain family members of mine as being intrusive. Whether or not they were objectively intrusive is up for debate.
Yeah.
But I felt intruded upon.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. Whether or not you were literally abandoned.
It's almost like the memories you latched onto.
Yeah.
So it's
that's a great way of saying it.
When I think of my life, I can think of significant memories. You don't remember every part of your life, but you remember certain things. And it's just interesting as you're doing the work of the Enneagram, which makes you just go back and understand your childhood. I had to prepare for this episode like 2 weeks ago. I talked to both my parents and asked them to explain me as a child. So that helped me understand myself in terms of the Enneagram so much more too. I have a lot to say. I could say about that, but I want to read this about the childhood wound. And this is again from the Sacred Enneagram. Guys, I just love this book. The custom childhood wound of the four is found in their experience of disconnect or distance from their caregivers. Their wound and the subsequent ways it caused them to turn in on themselves are the reason behind the four's feeling of abandonment. This sense of wounding only reinforces their basic fear, that they have no personal importance or somehow are less significant than others.
So we've already done these disclaimers of the perceived wound.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, we have complete control over this podcast, so you can say whatever you want. But like, do you want to talk about what you felt like your perceived wound was? Like, I'm already giving the disclaimer. It's not throwing your parents under the bus or anything because it's
I don't
it's
even think
it's wound.
Right. I don't think it was necessarily like. It's really interesting to think of my parents. It is this idea that there's something about me that like doesn't always deserve to be there, or like there's something like there's something a little bit off about you. That's kind of like what the four's like big feeling is, and like I don't really know exactly like what made me. I can't think of like a single experience that made me feel that. But my like childhood is also marked by quite a bit of anxiety and like separation anxiety and feeling a sense of like abandonment and like fear of like being left alone. So like, and not being able to like make it on my own almost. So that is, I don't know how related that is to fourness though.
It sounds like it's related based on the quote you just read.
I know. I think it is. I think it's semi-related. I don't know.
I mean, again, we're
doing the work of the Enneagram is very complicated.
We're new experts,
New experts.
Baby experts. Does the stuff, I almost like picture like this documentary Planet Earth and like, or this idea of like peacocking, like where birds like make themselves more interesting with their feathers and their dances and their colors. I don't know. Like I'm not referencing anything I've read on that. I'm just engaging with what you said. Is there something about like attracting attention that compensates for your fear of abandonment?
Yeah, and it's like, no, that is like 100% the way it works, I think, for a 4, which is like a 4 at their worst goes to 2, which I don't know if we like. So a 4 at their worst, if you don't understand, there's like in the Enneagram, there's different like lines that you can fall to. So a 4 integrates to 1, and then stress goes to 2, or when they're feeling like unsafe goes to 2. And that is like these crazy codependent tendencies matched with my 4-ness of a need to be significant.
Ooh,
so it can be like, what?
I've watched it happen to you.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like a shocking like need to be needed, but it's also like in an extravagant way. But it's, I think, all of this, like we were talking about this earlier, of like, it's almost a test that like a 4 is like, you don't even I'm just now realizing, because I'm doing the work at the Enneagram, so much of like the things that we do subconsciously. But it's like this test of like seeing if people will stick around in the midst of all my emotions, or in the midst of all of everything I'm experiencing.
That tests people's patience. You know, but I'm not saying that as like a diss to you. I'm saying it's a reality. You know what I mean? And it has probably 9 times out of 10 the desired results. I feel like that strategy weeds out the true, friends, or the true, but a lot of people don't have the patience to stick around for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, 4s are considered the most dramatic. Some people aren't here for the drama.
I don't know. I think every number has their own version of drama, and every
what
number.
What did Chris called us? The diva.
The diva. I don't know. Like I have to. I bet 8s can be divas in their own way.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, but I think there's this. So 4s are marked by like this sense of suffering. They're like the most comfortable of the Enneagram numbers. They sit in like the heart, one of the like the heart triad, and they're the most like. I think they're the most at ease with emotions.
Yeah.
And they like almost pride themselves in that, in the sense, like, if I experience sadness, even if I just see sadness, and this is introjection. Do you want to talk about? I want to talk about introjection. But
I don't even know what that is.
Really?
Yeah. Introjection?
It's the 4 thing.
Talk about it.
It's the 4 defense mechanism, or like the 4.
I think this is jogging my memory, but
I don't know the psychological term for it, but it's like what happens.
Oh, we talked about this. Was this you and me, or I felt like I read it on a
no,
podcast?
I think it's the
introjection.
It's like, okay, and what it is, and I'm just like starting to understand it, and I have a quote somewhere, but I don't know where it is. It would take
We have
too
so
long.
many books and
it's so much.
Quotes.
But what happens is a 4 when they like walk into a room.
Do you want me to try to look it up while you talk? Introjection?
Well, you could look up what introjection is, but there's a certain Beatrice Butler quote that I would actually love to find. But that would be, we'll see. It's this idea of when you walk into a space, if a 4 notices an emotion in someone else or something they're experiencing, they like could potentially like swallow that emotion whole, basically is what they say, and then it gets turned on themselves. So like something that like I was talking to my parents about of like how I behaved as a child, and so 4s are marked by moodiness, is that I would sometimes, like if I was upset or stressed or experiencing something, that like everybody in the room would know that I was feeling that whatever emotion it was, but it was very clear that it was something I was dealing with, and it was like internal, like almost like fighting with myself. And like that's exactly what introjection does, is like I could like see or experience someone else, like they had this thing happen to them, and then introjection swallows that, and then I remember some experience where something like that happened to me, and then I like go into this place of like that emotion and like eating that and like needing, like it's almost you interrogate that emotion and like what they're experiencing, you like introject it.
That's how I know I'm not a 4. Like I'm a 5 wing 4, so I can relate to a lot of 4 tendencies.
Yeah.
But I don't not. Let me just read. I Wikipedia'd it.
Yeah.
This is a wild concept. Generally, introjection, not intra. Introjection in psychoanalysis generally is regarded as the process where the subject replicates in him or herself behaviors, attributes, or other fragments of the surrounding world, especially of other subjects. Cognate concepts are identification, incorporation, and internalization. To use a simple example, a person who picks up traits from his friends, e.g. a person who begins frequently exclaiming ridiculous as a result of hearing a friend of theirs repeatedly doing the same, is introjecting. Projection has been described as an early phase of introjection. So it sounds like introjection is like projection on steroids.
Yeah, so 6 is project and 4 is introject.
Wow.
Doesn't it make sense sometimes when you think of certain things?
It does, but it's a big concept that is going to take some time for me to truly become comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah. I wish I could find this quote.
Let me just ask you a question. How
Yeah.
do you feel as a 4?
Can I read it? I found the quote.
Can you?
Okay.
Do you know when we go back and listen really quick? When we go back and listen, I say let me and you say can I.
I wonder
That's
if
very
this
interesting.
is...
I don't think that's Enneagram. I think it's male female.
Oh, I think that's what all I was thinking. It
Let
has
me.
to be.
Here I come.
I'm going to.
White male.
I'm trying
let
to.
me.
I'm trying to fight that, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main type 4 defense mechanism is introjection. Introjection is the 4's primary defense mechanism. It is a psychological defense through which 4s internalize painful feelings as a way to protect themselves. As psychologist Nancy McWilliams explains, introjection is the process whereby what is outside is misunderstood as coming from inside. It's so much. It's so true. Introjection operates as a defense mechanism by allowing an individual to identify with and swallow another person whole. When you introject someone, you take that person inside you, and whatever that person represents to you becomes part of your identity. Through introjection, you give yourself a feeling of being able to control that person and whatever they do or stand for.
Yikes.
Crazy.
That's
so
deep.
That's another thing is we all are manipulative in different ways, I think, and the Enneagram just points out your ways.
Does that in any way relate to that Kate girl that you idolized as a teenager at the head of that camp?
Megan Fate?
Megan Fate.
Oh.
Do you feel like you introjected Megan Fate?
Oh, I'm sure I did. Her personality type and what she stood for. Yeah. I can see this playing out in like so many ways in my life in terms of,
What's one example of like a big one?
Tyler Joseph.
Oh, Tyler Joseph. You're interjecting?
Yeah, that's like
Swallowing
that's a level on some
Little baby
level. But also I can think of like I could be sitting around at like we work at churches, which is like places where often people are like have to be vulnerable or like not have to, but
Expected
it's like
to be
like, oh, this is your raw self, and we're gonna talk about things, and I don't know. So like we'll do things like prayer requests or sharing different things, and if someone shares something that like I can latch on to, like I don't even realize it's happening until it's happened. Like someone could share something that's their own experience, and it's not even selfishness, I don't think, but like I'll then introject that like experience or that feeling or emotion. And then like my day can then become whatever that was because I heard that one thing and I introjected it.
Oh,
I don't always, but sometimes I do.
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't.
You've probably witnessed that.
That's unique. Yeah. Oh, I've witnessed it. Yeah, and isn't that interesting? Like defensiveness or projecting, these are great words that seem to be in generally the common vernacular of everyday speech. Like if you're talking in a coffee shop with, I don't know, a person and you say projection, it seems to me that most people know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But
this is some great additional language, introjection.
I know. It's good. It's been blowing my mind and opening me up to experiences. So that's another cool thing about the Enneagram is it makes you re-examine old experiences and have a language for why you felt so crazy or why you did that. Because what happens is that I'll introject something and then like I'm exhausted 5 hours later and I'm like, why did I do that? That was silly. I can see it when I like can look at it from a bird's eye view. I can like, oh, that was wild. But sometimes I don't even know in the moment that it's happening.
Man, it's so hard because I feel like we're just getting started on the 4. But like I'm not even going to read the rest because I just want to mostly talk about you specifically. But like I guess without reading more descriptors about the Enneagram 4, what specifically do you, Macie, like about being a 4? Like what do you like?
A lot. That's the thing is we started out super sad. 4s are like the meaning makers of the world. And so like that's the thing is there's like it's the shadow side of that is that they don't see meaning in themselves, so they find meaning in other things. But it is this like really cool draw to beauty. 4s are like the artists of the world typically, which the Enneagram language has helped me to actually like trust that about myself. So like, thank you Enneagram for that. And specifically Ryan's podcast on the 4 with Chris Hewart's, like it gave me permission to like identify as an artist. And like, what I mean by that is just like being a person who like is trying to like be the most authentic self they can be. And that is what the drive of the 4 is. And like something that I've heard that has been really helpful for me in like trusting like it's good that I'm a 4 is that like 4s like with like 4s draw others into that and like hopefully like help to like remind everyone that like there's more to this place than just like we need to find like pause and look at the beauty, and that's meaningful. And like 4s are like remind us that like we can have our sad emotions because like we're comfortable doing that and displaying that, which gives others permissions to maybe to like experience that. Because I don't think sadness is actually bad. It just is. And we like place this like, oh, sadness, and it's like, no, it just is. Like,
yeah, I have a lot to learn from that. I remember hearing Ian Morgan Cron talk about the way he experiences feelings, and especially as a 5, my experience of feelings are very categorized. Like I'm like, okay, I was here, and now I'm making a distinction, and now I'm going to feel this.
Yeah.
And now moving away from that, I'm going to feel this. And it's all very categorized. And he said he moves through emotions like it's soup. Like it's just like,
yeah,
these are all the emotions all right now.
I could be feeling so many at once.
Yeah. And I have to be very aware and in control of the emotion I'm feeling, you know? So
I don't know how you do that.
Well, it's a self-preservation thing, I think. It's not, that's the thing I'm not supposed to be doing. I could help people.
Because sometimes I'm so lost in my emotions. I can
help you categorize.
Be like so confused what's going on because like, as I said earlier, like a 4 thing is like, I love this quote is like a 4 is like quintessential day is like complete tragedy and complete ecstasy.
Yay. Wow.
And like, I don't even know how to explain why that quote has like resonated so much with me, but it like really does. Like that's living. Like that's fully experiencing the world.
Yeah. So what I would love for you to do is say not as the rookie Enneagram expert explaining 4s.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about how that specifically plays out for Macie. Like, what does that mean for you? How does that play out in your life? Extreme ecstasy and extreme tragedy.
I don't know entirely. Like, okay, I can think of days that were like sacred or like special, unique days. Like, I mentioned this in a previous podcast, like very briefly, but when Chester from Linkin Park died, that was like really significant and like that was really hard, and like I was really sad about that like for a long time. And I had like a day where I like just let myself be really, really sad about it. And like, because he's someone who had sung a lot about like remaining strong, and but like also was really honest. He's probably a 4 too, like about like the tragedy of life, and he took his own life, and it was just like very not unexpected, but at the same time like you never thought that would actually happen. And so like that day I spent like painting and made this like really like dark painting and like wrote like words from like his most recent song that like he wrote about like the significance of like people being here, and it's like a song he needed to hear, and like he couldn't even hear his own song. So sad. It's so sad. But that day was like also so healing and so good. Like I was so sad, but it was also like a very good like emotional time, if that makes sense.
It does.
And like was beautiful.
It does. And it doesn't necessarily make sense in the sense that I relate or I do that, but it makes sense. And I think that's what I would love for you to talk a little bit about. It seems that well, it seems that both 4s and 5s are severely misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because I've heard 5s are the most misunderstood, 4s are the most misunderstood. I guess 4s and 5s are both misunderstood.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways. I've heard 5s are most complex, and I've heard 4s are misunderstood.
Yeah, so I do think, as Macie and I have continued to journey along the Enneagram, that there are potential. It's so interesting to think about, like, using the Enneagram as a lens to look at your kids through. I think I would love to tell parents, just settle down as a whole, settle down. Be open to who your kid is becoming. But if you need a tool, which it seems like people do, the Enneagram helps you say, oh, this person's an 8. That's why they're doing that. Or this person's a 3.
It makes it less scary.
Yeah. And it seems that people are the most spooked by 4s, potential 4s, like as kids, like this kid's doing this weird thing, this unique, different thing. And so it's like, let me just say this as a 4, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the very nature of a 4 is that they're going to do something different. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, here's classic 4 behavior. They dye their hair. No, that's one type of 4.
Yeah.
The hallmark of a 4 is it's going to be something that probably you've never seen before, and it's going to freak you out. But it's just that it seems that they want to be unique and different. And it's not even like aesthetics. It's not even like, oh, they're piercing their ears or they're writing sad songs. It's like they're just doing things that stand out and make them seem potentially strange.
Yeah.
So
because they need to be different.
Yeah. So what is like? I do believe that there will be some parents listening to this. Like what would parents need to know about a 4?
Well, one thing that I was listening to, so my parents, I think, did a good job raising me. They didn't understand me as a 4, and there were so many things that they didn't understand that this, I think, would have been helpful. And my parents, I think, felt a little lost at times with me. So I think that
all parents feel lost.
I know, that's
Enneagram. True. It's hard. You get one shot.
Yeah.
Unless you're gonna have several rounds of kids, but I'm doing it once. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. So
well, let me just say one final thing. It's not even one shot. It's like this is like the most emotional thought. It's like
go for it.
One shot at Macie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not even like many kids. It's like you could become an expert and raise a certain kid 10 times. You only get one Macie.
Yeah, it's true.
And you only get one Jack and one Avery. It's so hard. Man.
This guy's getting really emotional. Yeah. So, advice for parents. I'll say 2 things. The first one is just like really practical and something that's been helpful for me, honestly, in doing ministry with 4s. And I have Sydney's a 4, so my best friend's a 4, which is the most fun 4 friendship. It's really powerful. But one thing that 4s like need, or I guess are looking for, and one thing that you can help is like they need to have the space to. So 4s are like marked by being emotional and like moody, and they sometimes need that space to process something. And like facts and feelings are like somewhat similar to 4s. Like they experience them. Like whatever they're feeling feels like fact to them. They like being told a rational fact like is, but if they're feeling a certain way, like being told a rational fact just feel like that doesn't count. Like they're too wrapped up in their feelings.
Wow.
So like when a 4 is kind of being swept away by their emotions, like as a parent or a friend or whatever, like giving them space to like have that emotion and like not telling them what they're experiencing, because they know what they're experiencing probably more than anyone else. But then like the advice I heard from the typology podcast was just like being there when they're done. Like at the end of when the 4 is like done being their moody, emotional self or going through something, which is like, it can be like, I think really like high emotions and really low emotions or like scared emotions.
Oh, right. So let's just clarify that. Like,
Yeah.
a 4 could be hyped up.
Yeah.
And that could be overwhelming for some people.
Yeah.
And also very low.
So that's the thing about the 4 is there's like this need for authenticity. So whatever they're feeling, I think subconsciously they're like needing to like press into it. So like if I'm starting to feel excited about something, I like need to interrogate that and like press into that emotion and be as excited as I can be, or like as sad or whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to understand myself. So advice is just to be there when they're done, because
Ooh, that's great advice. Be there when they're done.
they just need to know that like at the end of the day, no matter what display or whoever they are, like that you'll still be there and still love them for just existing. They don't trust that themselves. They don't trust that like their existence is like worth being there, I think sometimes.
I just think of, I mean, that's very heavy. I think
that's just some force.
I think you know, as somebody that doesn't relate to this, and this is where I really do, again, I've said it before just in this podcast, but like my 5-ness, I don't quite know what to say about how we distinguish between what is a traditionally feminine trait. Mm-hmm. But it seems that whatever it is, the genetic makeup, women or maybe culturally, women are more in tune with their emotions and have been given permission to be in tune with their emotions. I don't know. But I do know that I think about the 3 most significant women in my life, which is my mom and my wife, Marissa, and my daughter, Avery. And there does seem to be this, I don't know, call it comfort with like a good cry.
Yeah.
Like a big, giant cry, like sobbing and convulsing. And
it's so cathartic.
As a male /5, I get panicked. And I'm like, the world is crumbling around me. And what I've come to trust through these 3 women in particular is they're going to be okay, and this is actually good for them, and that it's been helpful if I am there on the other end of it. You know, in my worst moments, I've run away.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
that's your response.
Yes, that's my instinct. It's not my response. I mean, my first instinct is get the heck out of there.
That's because I would think my first instinct is to like, what can I do?
Yeah, no. I'm like, oh.
But then, so this is my second piece of advice.
Okay, please.
Which was, this is where like, as I was thinking about this, I was driving over here. Like, I was always like told like by my siblings, like I was like a baby. And like.
UFO.
Oh gosh. UFO was what like the catchphrase was for when I had like basically just like mood swings.
Unidentified freakouts.
Yeah, unidentified freakouts was the name of what they were. I don't know if they were, I think that they were on some level multiple times like panic attacks, and I think sometimes probably mood swings. I don't really know what was what. I was a child. And my parents were confused and we didn't have the right language. But so I was always told I was like a baby about things and too emotional and too sensitive. And like that is the thing. And not just from my parents and like probably not that many times, but that's just the message that I heard and like kept repeating to myself probably. And like I've heard that from like siblings and other things. And just like kids, because I cried a lot and I was sensitive. But like that is, I think, society's misconception and like the 4's gift is their sensitivity. And so like as a parent or a friend or anyone, like sensitivity, I think is like reminds us all like yeah, we should maybe be a little more sensitive. Like, I don't want my sensitivity to go away. Like, I think for so long I like saw this as a trait that I shouldn't have almost, and like to like suck it up and like not be as sensitive to things. But like I'm starting to see the beauty in the sensitivity, and that like I think it's a good reminder sometimes for us all not to just brush things off. That like maybe we should pause and like reflect on this emotion or whatever we're feeling. And I think that like that's what's happening when a 4 gets so sensitive. I think, okay, this is another thing is 4s are always like, there's always this like word of like, others just don't have it quite as hard as us, which is such a stupid phrase, but it's almost true. I'm like, I don't think other people's brains are just thinking or being as like, as like raw as mine is. And that's just like such an annoying thought, but
there's
it's
probably
a
some
true
truth
thought.
to it too, but it's I think it seems like the integration is being open to the occasions where somebody may be on your level.
And also letting myself be like have space to not be this.
Oh, right. Because that comes with its own unique burden.
Right. Because I like genuinely do feel like I have to always be like, I don't know. I don't even know the right word for it. I mean, I think it probably is raw, which is like the common word, but it's like always have to like be fully living and experiencing something. I never want to be like numb.
Oh man, it's so interesting. Like we said this last week about our Bible texts of like we're not even scratching the surface. We're hovering over the top. We're not even touching. I'm not even putting my finger on the surface of a 4 at this point, which is actually fairly disappointing. I don't know. I'm just cognizant of like we could go 5 more episodes on 4s alone and you alone with this, But I have a few things I do want to talk about.
Yeah. And
I will just say, like, of course we have these books. I'm flying blind without my Wisdom of the Enneagram book. But Macie and I both did listen to Typology today, which is Ian Morgan Cron's, again, another resource. Ian Morgan Cron's episode or a podcast about.
Did you know that he made 100 million listens in a year?
Or
he got his podcast has 100 million listens, and
it sounded also like he had 1 million downloads or
something crazy.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Good job, Ian Morgan Cron. That's podcast goals.
Yeah.
So what happened on this podcast in particular today that Macie and I both listened to? This was her second time around. My first is that there was a panel of 4s. So they said some great things about 4s that I wrote down that I would love to hear Macie comment on. One that I was very intrigued by was an Orthodox prayer, and I know you've heard this because you listened, but one of the guests was saying that this prayer resonated with them. And the phrase, and I don't know how this was part of the bigger prayer, but the phrase was sort of asking for grace. And the quote was, asking for grace, when we have been wounded by the beauty of another. That seems heavy. What does that mean? And I feel like you resonate with that. When we have been wounded by the beauty of another.
Yeah.
On many levels, probably.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking?
There's an envy element, but also this is what I think in my sort of study of 4s, there's a simultaneous envy and appreciation.
Yeah, so this is language that you helped me a while ago to understand of this, like looking through like a foggy glass of 4s in terms of like they're always seeing other things and like wanting it for themselves, but not in like when I see something I admire or like that is beautiful, like it's just like it hurts so much how much I want that.
Wow.
Which is so crazy. But that's the envy. It's not like a greedy envy of like wanting what you have. It's wanting that like beauty, and not even like your specific kind, I would even say. But I don't know. So that does
Yeah, this
make a lot
this
of
pops into my
sense.
head. I just remember this was before we drove to Camp Side by Side last year. And Marissa, my wife, was in Nordstrom. And you were in the car with me and the kids. And a woman walked by on the street who had a shaved head and lots of tattoos and earrings. And you just went ballistic. You're like, that woman's aesthetic is amazing. I love everything about her. Like, did you see that? You know, but the reaction was so big.
Really?
And I relate to that. I relate to that reaction. But like, it seemed very, that was a unique experience. That's not like some sort of everyday thing I have with most friends.
I don't remember that at all.
I'm sure you don't, but I think you can probably relate to this idea of you seeing somebody's
aesthetic and being like, oh yeah, like I like immediately notice it. I'm like, I love it, and I'm like, I want it, and that's where the Tyler thing is, where it's like, I love his aesthetic, and I like desire it all the time.
Yeah, that's so complicated. It's so complicated.
Yeah,
and this is, I guess, comparing to other numbers. I'm not going to call a particular number out. I'll just say it seems as if this sort of mentality just like disintegrates at the feet of different numbers. Like they don't relate. They're not. You're like, look at that person's aesthetic, and they're like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah, and I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, and they want to talk about the news or like more practical matters. And to a certain extent, and this is where I can really relate to you, sometimes the most important thing is an aesthetic. I could care less about practical matters. 100%. I could care less about budgets and politics and, recycling.
Yeah.
At some time, the only thing I care about is the art or the song or the aesthetic. And somebody was like, you didn't compost that orange peel. And I'm like, whoa, how can you be talking about an orange peel? That seems to be the thing that's the most important to certain people sometimes.
I mean, I think that's important.
Of course it's important.
But I
believe
saying.
Intellectually it's important, but I'm saying what's making my heart beat.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it is definitely art and aesthetics.
Yeah.
Typically.
This is another great quote in the same vein of this is they said fours will celebrate others, which you do so well. You celebrate others so well. It's one of your greatest gifts. And then you pass that on to especially the girls you work with. Fours celebrate others so well, but then wonder why they will, let me read this quote right. These were like me taking notes, so it's not phrased perfectly. They celebrate others, but then wonder when they will do the big thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's so great you're doing that. Even if you're talking about ASMR, you're like, oh, cool. This ASMR person on YouTube is doing this. But what am I going to do?
Yeah. I think that I wonder if that's like the competitive threeness in me sometimes being drawn out.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Someday we'll do a whole episode on the wings. I guess when I took the test, and we're not huge on tests, I was so close to being a 4. And so like I resonate so closely with both. But I definitely, when I'm reading, resonate more with the 5.
Yeah.
And it says, Ian Morgan Cron and his buddies,
his 4 buddies, on the 4 buds,
said that we live by feelings and not thoughts.
Yeah.
That is the definitive distinction between the two of us. I live primarily by thoughts, and I trust thoughts over feelings. And it seems like
I think thoughts and feelings are so similar. I think they're not that different.
I think that's the misconception or the misunderstanding of before. I think Sandra McCracken was the one that was saying she has been called out by therapists for saying, or they said to her, your feelings are not thoughts. They're not. Like, it's like in the sense of like your feeling is not necessarily reality.
But it kind of is. It's
like
a part of the reality.
It's 80 degrees out today is a reality. It's a fact.
Yeah, but if it feels like 100, then it's a part of the experience is that it feels like 100.
I don't think that's what they mean. I think what they were saying in a darker way is it feels like life has no meaning. Yeah. That's a feeling, not a thought. If we want to entertain the idea that life has no meaning on an intellectual level, that's a whole different concept. But like, if you're
really
just
go
feeling
off.
in the moment, or, the fact that you're feeling sad doesn't necessarily mean that the situation is sad,
Yeah, I guess that's true. That sometimes we can be swept away by our feelings to then not be reminded that, like, what are the facts. But I think that we also help correct the world to remember
You
feelings.
do, because that's what I need in my integration.
Right.
Like, again, before we even did Instagram, before we ever did Enneagram, I was already using language. I had identified 5 characters in my spirit, or my
Oh,
makeup.
yeah.
And one was emotionally detached Earl. This was before I even knew about 5. But
Emotionally
Marissa definitely
detached
knew
Earl.
that, like, in my crisis moments, I floated up into objectivity and was not able to be like an emotionally present human. That was a defense mechanism of mine. And so, like, I need a 4, probably also an 8s in my life to, like, call me out and be like, get in tune with your emotions, get in tune with reality, get in tune with the moment.
Yeah.
Be here,
Yeah.
And a 4 can do that for me. But a 4 probably needs to be pulled in the other direction. I'm like, hey, like, let's just get some bearings here.
The world is not ending today.
But it does seem so, like, it honestly, like, you know Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
It does seem so Gollum-like sometimes. Like, the emotion is the precious.
Yeah.
Like, there's a clutching to it and an obsession. It's like, this is my precious thing. Don't come near this sadness or
This is me and my sadness.
tragedy. Yeah, like, it is sort of wonderful and also sort of.
It's gotta be so frustrating.
Yeah, I guess for me personally, I can't talk for other numbers. I guess personally, sometimes I'm like, look, like, I could probably understand better than you think. Like, let me in. It's like, no, like, this is my unique thing, my own. Like, geez, okay, fine.
We're so dramatic.
Have it.
It's fine.
Another one of the things that I said that we'll be kind of done with this, but I wanted to hear you comment on, because I feel like this would definitely resonate with you, is something they called the doom loop.
The doom loop. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I love the doom loop. They talked about making a cereal called Doom Loops.
Yeah, doom loops. That's what I'm eating now in the morning, doom loops.
Oh, I resonated so much with the doom loop. And I can
I've seen
start
it
to
too.
see the doom loop coming, and then I don't know what to do. How do they describe it? How would you describe the doom loop?
When I watch it happen to you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Or I guess.
gosh.
I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of what we were just talking about. This ties together. It's sort of this loop of irrational thinking that I, again, am working on being sensitive and present to.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what she's going through.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just you, even though you'd probably like it to be just you. But
the doom loop. I wish that I could go back and hear exactly what they say.
It's not like the 6 doom loop, because I think
No,
a 6 would have their
it's
own
different.
unique doom loop.
It's like the doom loop of this is all it's literally things becoming colorless.
Oh, that's heavy.
And that's really what
That's
it is.
the unique Macie way of saying it. But I think a 6 doom loop would be practical everyday situations falling apart.
Yeah.
Like, worst case scenarios. I'm going to run out of gas. The bill didn't get paid. I'm not going to make it to the grocery store. I didn't return the phone call.
Right.
That's a 6 doom loop. I think a 4 is more existential.
Mine's
Life has no meaning.
Life has no meaning.
I'm worthless.
I'm worthless, and this is all worthless. What? So 4 is find the beauty, but then if they're in the doom loop, it's almost like the doom loop. We've just really attached to this. It's almost like it's the opposite of they can't see the beauty, and then they're lost, and then they break free from the doom loop, and they find meaning and beauty in everything. It's it's shocking, the roller coaster ride of a 4.
Or being in a relationship with a 4, I guess I would say I wouldn't want to say this to you or any other 4 in a way that would push you into doubling down on all these sort of potentially unhealthy tendencies. Mm-hmm. But again, in terms of like finding the balance between the beauty and the hard elements of our numbers.
Yeah.
It's almost like listening to a really great album or watching a really great movie of these really unpredictable ups and downs. You know, that makes something interesting. And with you in particular, it's like on one day, East is up and there's hope and beauty in the world and you're inspiring. And I'm like getting teared up talking to you and I'm like, this is amazing. Like there is hope in the world. If it wasn't for Macie, I wouldn't feel this right now. And then the very next day or even the next hour, it's like life is pointless. And you're like, what? You just helped me understand that life is meaningful. And then you have to deal with that. And then I think we're sucked into that world, not in the it's sad to think of you being in the pure stress of it, of like you truly are experiencing the existential crisis. I think I'm experiencing it vicariously, being like, yeah, maybe life isn't maybe life is worthless, you know. But I'm experiencing it at arm's length. You're going through it.
Yeah, I like truly am like, there's nothing like I just existential crisis or like complete profound beauty some days.
You even predicted it. You even said, I don't know if it was at Shasta, or shortly after, where you're like, you already sensed a day when you would want to punch somebody in the face for saying East is up.
Yeah.
That is the most 4 thing you've ever said. You know you love it now, but someday somebody's going to say East is up, and you're like, screw you, East is not up.
Yeah, it's going to be the wrong moment, and I'm going to be like, that is not true. Like, today, East is not up, and I will be mad. I know. But right now, everybody, East is up.
Oh my gosh.
4s. We are never going to be able to understand. This is a wild attempt of an interview of a 4. And to tell people what the 4 is, like, we missed so many things about 4s, I think.
Today?
Yeah.
Yeah, we really did. We need to give it another try.
I feel like it was a little emo. I think 4s are a little happier than this may have come across. I'm typically pretty like cheerful, I think.
You are.
Right?
You really are. But you're your own unique 4. You know?
Am I less cheerful than I think I am?
No, you're cheerful. You're moody, but you're cheerful. I think it's taking it beyond the emotions. It seems that 4s really truly do want to be unique, and that you correct me if this sounds wrong, but like the integration is. And this could work for every number in their own way. The integration is everyone's unique.
Yeah.
Everyone has something special and cool and beautiful to bring to the world. And a 4 at their best seems to be the type of person. Let me read 4 in health. I don't even know what this is going to say.
Yeah. And some days I feel like such a healthy 4. Like today I was an integrated 4 because a 4 moves to 1 and 1s are organized and they're able to like be more efficient and get things done, and they like start to see not only like meaning in the world, but they start to see and like have vision for like what it could look like too, not just what it could feel like. And so like today I totally cleaned and like revamped our living room. I added shelves, did all these things. It was a 4 integrating to 1 day.
Oh my gosh.
Whenever I clean, I'm like, I'm being a 1.
And I guess that goes into the box thing too. Like, again, we'll probably do future episodes on this about specifically focusing on the concepts of integration and health and stress. But like Macie theoretically is supposed to exhibit 1-like qualities in health and becomes sort of 2-like in stress.
Oh, that's how I feel like I really realized what type I was, is seeing my patterns of stress.
Mm-hmm. But
because I'm just 23, guys, so I'm a
just
baby.
23.
I'm a baby on this journey that is life.
But yeah, you're so far ahead of where a lot of people are.
I don't think there's such thing as ahead or behind. I think we're all just on a journey.
Okay, goodness.
What?
You know, okay, well, I mean, that would just bring up a discussion. you don't think the Enneagram has pulled you a little bit ahead of the average 23-year-old?
I don't in one area of my life, but like
Sure, in one area.
in just one aspect, but like there's other things that other people are ahead of me on. So it's like all like a spectrum. It's not like there is one what is ahead or behind. There's not like a standard.
I'm not even going to go there with you right now.
Okay. Just saying.
Well, so in terms of being a 4, it seems as if one of a 4's greatest contributions to society could be inviting everyone into and celebrating everyone's unique, diverse expression of themselves.
Yeah.
And I'll say that just for the fact of like, I feel like you've done that to the girls that you work with in the youth ministry, but you do that with me. Like your existence and your 4-ness helps me contemplate and think about my own unique contribution, you know? Well, and that's cool.
That's sweet.
But I think the trick for the 4 is like the moment they do inspire someone to be unique, that they would celebrate the emergence of the uniqueness. And I think typically 95% of the time you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that a fear of a 4, a big fear of mine is that I'm going to say, so like, I'm this big 21 Pilots fan, and I talk about 21 Pilots a lot with the kids that I do ministry with because music is relevant. And the last thing I'd want is for them to have like the same 21 Pilots thoughts that I have. I'm like, have your thoughts about it. Like that's like the most like way I can think about it. And like, it's just like, I want to inspire others to have their experience, not
that's
my
beautiful.
own.
That's beautiful. And it should, that's a worthy calling and a needed calling. And again, just to accentuate how these numbers are distinct, if anything, I would want people to have my thoughts. As
really?
a 5, yeah. Like, I think my thoughts are the right thoughts, and we need to streamline those thoughts. We need to get everybody thinking the right thoughts.
Like, I think I can understand that in some way of, like, sometimes I can get all, like, oh, I think I know what I'm talking about. But, like, in general, I think I do want I want people to come to their own, like to be thoughtful, but, like, it to be their own unique thoughtfulness.
Mm-hmm. And I do want that, but I'm talking about my core base instinct. You know, I'm not saying I literally do at the end of the day want those things, but
that's funny.
Let me just say, it says here the type 4 at their best. So this is level 1 health. And if you
level 1 health, this is what we're striving for.
Yeah, if everybody looks at the Enneagram Institute again,
this is the standard
website. It has 10 levels of health, which I find to be helpful. But listen to a 4 at their most healthy. It says that they are profoundly creative, expressing the personal and the universal. Ooh, I mean, we could do a whole episode on just that sentence. Expressing the personal and the universal. Isn't that the truth?
It's cool.
Possibly in a work of art, inspired, self-renewing, and regenerating, they're able to transform all their experiences into something valuable and self-creative.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's a 4.
I hope to one day be all those things.
Yeah.
I think at times, sometimes I can be some of those things.
For sure. I think
stability is a thing I'm hoping for one day.
Yeah. Well, all of us are hoping.
Equanimity, that is the 4's thing that we like. That's our balance point is equanimity. I don't even know what that word means officially. I think we're getting towards the end.
We are. Equanimity, I would assume it implies some sense of balance between you and the universe, that you're not so distinct.
Yeah. It's like perspective almost. I think 4s are always balancing this, like either they're feeling incredibly huge or they're feeling so small they're insignificant. That's the thing, and that's
so
what equanimity
tragic.
Really is like finding that balance and realizing that things don't have to be quite as polar and extreme. 4s are like extreme. I think someone else said 4s are the least. The world has the least amount of 4s, and so she was encouraging us to speak up more because there's
Yeah.
less of us out there.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the another teaching of the Enneagram is like this idea of like in terms of it being these 9 whole like ways to understanding, and it really like when you start to understand all 9 types, you understand like almost like all of humanity because you're understanding these 9 like essential ways in which people are interacting with each other.
Yeah.
That
sounds
so
right.
much, you guys.
Sounds so good. Yeah, I feel 2 things. I feel on the one hand very grateful for the opportunity to sort of deep dive on you and a 4 type. At the same time, I feel very unsatisfied. Like I feel like we're just starting. So we definitely need to do another a 4 episode part 2.
It'll be in like a year.
But I don't even think we need a part 2 in terms of like inviting another 4. Like we still have a lot of work to do with you as a 4.
I know, but I know like quite a few 4s, and which is funny because 4 friendships, I think there's like an initial barrier of like the envy of the 4. Like so 4s don't.
We didn't
like
even talk about envy.
We did a little bit.
Slightly.
We did, but like so 4s typically sniff out other 4s in the room and are like, oh, you think you're a 4? I'm a 4. But once they can kind of get past that, 4s and 4s together is epic. It's so fun.
Yeah.
So, because Scott knows.
And I have my own Helen Palmer book about Enneagram and love and work.
Oh, there's one thing that I wanted to say. There's one
Please.
last thing that I just wanted to say. And like, I think the best way to understand a 4 is like, honestly, okay, well, I think poetry is like the best word for a 4. It's like 4s, like they're like considered the poets or like I guess painters in the sense that like they'll make something, and this is why we need to create art. Is like to make something that like we ourselves know is like the true, we understand the full meaning, but there's parts of it that like others will not know fully, but they can still experience and be invited into that emotion or that feeling. And that's like what poetry or painting like really essentially is.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. I'm all there. Okay, so this is as we're wrapping up, I feel sad. I would love to just maybe record a 3-minute thing that we'd post on our feed of me reading this thing in the Wisdom of the Enneagram, which you can only get a physical copy of. So like I don't have my physical copy and I can't download an e-copy of this book. But what I love about that book is that at the end of each chapter on each number, it has something called the number in essence. So the essence of the number. And it essentially highlights in a really beautiful way the unique thing that each number has to contribute to the world. And I don't have that in front of me right now. And I'm sad about it.
I think I might be able to find something.
Okay.
I'm going to look. This is a long shot.
But this is my other book that I really like called The Essential Enneagram. And this talks about a 4's personal development. And I like this. It says, the goal of a 4's development is to realize that in the present moment we are loved and completely whole. That's huge.
What was that?
The ultimate goal of the development of a 4.
Is that we're loved?
To realize that in the present moment, right here and right now, we are loved and whole, completely whole, not lacking anything.
I think that does
lacking
really
no
hit
essential
home.
quality or ingredient, and that we are interconnected.
Oh, I forgot to talk about the word longing. That is the most quintessential 4 word.
Lots of longing.
Lots of longing. Like there's always this sense of this is incomplete. There's something missing. What is missing? Like longing for the fuller experience.
Longing.
I don't think that am I
the
fully living right now?
The first thing that I wrote on my notes from this podcast is inconsolable longing.
Inconsolable. That is so accurate. It's so annoying. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find what I thought I was.
This says, in terms of personal development, a 4 can focus on how can I further my personal development, focusing on what is positive in my life rather than what is missing, maintaining a consistent course of action despite fluctuating feelings, cultivating happiness in others in order to become less self-absorbed, delaying reactive action until intense emotions begin to subside. Okay, let me end with this. This is in lieu of me not having my Wisdom of the Enneagram book here, but it's this is my essential Enneagram book, and here's some adjectives that describe the 4. So this isn't as great as essence, but I do like that there's sort of we're ending on accentuating what 4s bring to the world in a very important way. Like if we're thinking about theologically, like in terms of like the body of Christ, like I think everybody brings a unique spiritual gift that's so essential. And that's what our goal as humans is to not only value our unique contribution, but make room for and value the unique gifts of others.
Of others, yeah.
So the 4 is idealistic, deeply feeling, sensitive, empathetic, caring, intense, specialness-oriented, creative disposition, authentic to self, introspective, and expressive.
I think I'm every one of those adjectives.
Yeah, you are. You are. And I think it's so needed in the world. And I mean, you and I both talk about the concept of profit a lot. I think that resonates with both of us in our own unique numbers and ways. But I think you help people see the world through a new lens and a different lens. And it can sometimes be an essentially an important dark lens. That's important.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes be an out of control positive lens. Like out of control in a great way. Like just huge, beautiful, optimistic lens, and
it's shocking when you go back and see how you're both of those, like how extreme I can be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fun, I guess.
I'm glad. We should.
It's really wild. It's a lot. It's taxing.
Yeah, I bet.
But that's the thing is the Enneagram is teaching me I don't have to always be that, and I that's a gift. But I also like life isn't. I don't have to always be constantly drawing out the most insane emotions. Like sometimes it's okay to just be chill and to just like enjoy something and like not need to like make it the most insane experience. So like 4s are known for making something like an ordinary experience extraordinary, but then that like the converse of that is that like we're like bored by the ordinary. We're like, what can be extraordinary? And sometimes like what's best for me is sometimes just like being satisfied with the ordinary. And that's like what I have to like keep practicing of like today it could be ordinary and that could be just as like meaningful and extraordinary.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And I just want to affirm, I mean, obviously you're not perfect, but I do see how the Enneagram, and I do see that the Enneagram has been a positive influence in your life in that sense,
Yeah, I'm trying.
At the very least, it helps you identify it. You're not as defensive as the everyday person. Like you've been able to sort of laugh at some of these quirks or.
Yeah, I think that part of it with the 4 is like this ability to laugh at themselves. They kind of you kind of have to be able to.
Yeah, the panel talked about that, the irony.
Yeah, like you have to be able to be ironic, or else it's just like because it's so comical sometimes. The life of a 4.
Yeah.
I mean, all of our lives are comical, but I particularly think mine's funny.
I think that has to be it for now.
That's it.
What a ride.
I don't even have a real hood to put over my head.
What is that? Is that a fake hood?
Yeah, it's like a fake hood. It's like almost like a baby sweatshirt that's getting me over putting a hood over my head.
What did you just say?
A baby sweatshirt.
That what?
It's helping me to get over putting my hood over my head.
What?
Like,
what?
Like, like I should probably grow out of that habit.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at a true 4 right now. Macie has her head halfway shaved and halfway dyed, and she's got all sorts of nose rings and triple earrings. And that's it. Thank you for listening. We do hope to do many more Enneagram episodes in the future.
Yeah, sorry, this one was crazy long.
If you have any thoughts about this episode, hit us on our Instagram feed. Don't private message us in our texts.
Yeah, yeah.
Do both. We like that. But we want to try to get some Instagram action going.
Thank you so much for listening. We love you. You are beautiful.
So good. Know your numbers. Stop being
defensive. It's no small thing. You're not a box. You're
not a box. Bust out of your box.
Bust out of your box. Okay, bye everybody.
Microphone down.